Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm 𝙎𝙬𝘎𝘎𝘎. In this episode, let's travel back to the mid-20th century and explore one of the most important figures in the entire history of the country. This man was a minister, a civil rights activist, and a political figure who instituted some of the most important societal changes in the history of the United States. He was a controversial figure. He's a man who's been accused of numerous ills, including such things as abuse and apostasy. But regardless, his legacy has endured and perhaps even grown since his assassination in the late 1960s. He was Martin Luther King Jr., the prominent civil rights activist of 20th century America. Now, historians typically point to King as the most important figure in the 20th century civil rights movement, which was really kind of a second wave of sorts following the initial civil rights upheaval after the American Civil War. So the first wave eradicated racial slavery in America, but it did not eradicate institutionalized racism in the nation, a notion that came to be known as Jim Crow laws that largely kept blacks, who were now free from slavery, still in social inferiority to whites. Now, King, who was born into this societal climate in 1929, came onto the scene as a young Baptist pastor in Atlanta, following the footsteps of his father. He began to see the glaring problem of Jim Crow America, and so he devoted his life to making the necessary changes in his country. Now, his method was unique. Instead of fighting hate with hate, King became the poster child for nonviolent, gentle protest. One example of this was his support of Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott of 1955, where Black Americans revealed the terrible segregation at hand in the busing industry in the city by simply refusing to ride the buses. King acted in numerous ways to eradicate racial injustice in America, even briefly going to prison for his efforts. He also led the famous March on Washington in 1963. And King created the Southern Christian Leadership Conference around the same time, and he grew in prominence as a champion of nonviolent protests for civil rights. Now, his work paid off in the 1960s when the United States government formally ended the legality of institutionalized discrimination against blacks with numerous passages of civil rights laws. Now, as we said earlier, King was a controversial figure, especially later in life when he became an outspoken critic of the Vietnam War. There were also rumors that are worth mentioning of infidelity and a denial of core tenets of the Christian worldview, as well as abuse. We're not sure how well-founded these rumors are, but you can imagine with a man such as this, there were bound to be those who wanted to silence his message. And on April 4th, 1968, King was shot and killed in Memphis, Tennessee. He left behind his wife, Coretta Scott King, and 4 children, dying at the age of 39. So in 1983, President Ronald Reagan declared the first Monday in January as Martin Luther King Jr. Day to honor the life and legacy of one of the most important men in American history. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe. And if you want us to cover one of your favorite moments in history, you can tell us in the comments. Now stay tuned for some new content.